I was 8 when my father died of cancer. He'd been sick for a year, and I watched him wither from the man who used to carry me on his shoulders to someone I barely recognized in a hospital bed. But he still smiled at me. Even when his voice cracked, even when the chemo took his hair, he smiled and told me he loved me. The day he died, I sat on the edge of his hospital bed for hours, not understanding that this would be the last warmth I'd feel from him. My mother didn't cry. She organized the funeral like she was planning a corporate retreat. No emotion, no tenderness. Just checklists. Within 3 months, she was dating again. 6 months later, she was engaged to a man named Jackson, a real estate mogul who walked around like the world owed him praise just for existing. He never looked at me like I was a person, only a complication. I tried to grieve. I'd sneak into closets and bury my face in Dad's old flannel shirts, breathing in whatever scent hadn't been washed away. I'd ask Mom if we could visit his grave. She rolled her eyes, said I was manipulating her for attention, that I needed to move on like a big boy. Her wedding to Jackson was held in a vineyard. Fancy. White chairs, linen napkins, and string quartets. I wasn't invited. At least not to the ceremony. Instead, on the morning of her wedding, she took me to the train station. She crouched down and smoothed my hair back. I remember thinking maybe this was the moment she'd finally talk to me like a mom again. Instead, she said, "You'll be better off with people who actually want you." She handed me a single backpack and motioned for me to board the train with 2 strangers, an elderly couple she said were friends of the family. She kissed my forehead like a stranger might kiss a puppy they were giving away. Then she turned and walked back toward the parking lot in heels. The train doors closed. I stood frozen at the window, watching her wedding dress disappear into the distance. That was the last time I ever saw her as my mother. The elderly couple were kind. Confused, even. They told me they were only supposed to drop me off in another town. But I refused to get off at the station. I was silent the whole ride, holding the strap of my backpack like it might keep me from falling apart. The train staff got involved. Police were called. Eventually, someone contacted my paternal grandparents, people my mother had kept me from for years. They arrived 2 days later with red eyes and open arms. My grandmother wept when she saw me. My grandfather just wrapped me in the tightest hug of my life and said, "You're safe now. She'll never touch you again." They fought for custody immediately. And they won. For the first time since my father's death, someone wanted me. Living with my grandparents was like waking up in a house that remembered how to love. They cooked me breakfast every morning. They kept my father's photo on the mantel. My room had a nightlight shaped like a moon and a quilt my grandmother stitched herself. Slowly, I started to feel human again. But something inside me had gone dark. One night, I overheard my grandparents talking in the kitchen. I was supposed to be asleep, but I had crept downstairs for water and stopped when I heard my name. She told the school he died. My grandmother whispered. Said he passed from the same cancer as his father. That's why they removed his records. I stood in the hallway, barefoot and breathless, gripping the cup so tight I thought it would shatter. My mother hadn't just abandoned me. She'd erased me, told people I was dead. The next day, I asked my grandfather what she meant. He didn't lie. He sat me down and said, "We'll never understand why some people can be so cruel, but we'll never let her win." That was the moment I stopped being a child. For the next few years, I lived in the shadows of the life I should have had. Every time we passed a holiday, I thought about the family dinners she was probably having without me. The birthday cakes with one less candle. The story she was telling that didn't include me, because to her, I no longer existed. Then, on my 13th birthday, my grandfather gave me something small but priceless. A box. Inside was a picture of my father holding me as a baby, and a worn photograph of a gold watch. She tried to sell it, he said. "Your father's watch?" Said it meant nothing to her. But I took this photo of it before she did. The watch had belonged to my father's father. It was passed down through generations. After Dad died, it should have gone to me. But instead, she pawned it for quick cash. That was when I understood something. She didn't just throw me away. She tried to delete everything about my father, too. That night, I stared at the photo of the watch for hours. I made a promise to myself. I wouldn't just survive. I would come back into her world, smiling, successful, undeniable, and make her admit what she did. Not to me, but to everyone. She'd told people I died. I'd make sure they saw me rise. I started keeping a notebook under my bed. I called it the plan. At first, it was full of childish things, ideas like find Jackson and egg his car, or write a letter to her friends saying I'm alive. But as I grew older, that notebook grew thicker, more detailed. more dangerous. I didn't just want revenge. I wanted control. From age 13 on, I lived for the future. While other kids obsessed over video games or crushes, I obsessed over leverage. I studied relentlessly. Business, law, finance, behavioral psychology, anything that might teach me how people like Jackson operated and how to dismantle them without ever raising my voice. By 15, I was coding bots that could scrape data on real estate investments. At 16, I could read a balance sheet better than most small-time investors. By 17, I got accepted into a top-tier business school. I didn't celebrate. I was already thinking 5 steps ahead. I tracked Jackson's company obsessively. Public records, SEC filings, charity events, whispered rumors on niche forums. I created fake online personas and joined business networking groups where I could study his type, egotistical men who thought every dollar they touched turned to gold. Jackson was over-leveraged. He moved too fast, bought too much, believed too deeply in his own infallibility. He was the kind of man who could be baited with prestige and the promise of exclusive access. I took notes, hundreds of pages of them. Every night, I'd add to the plan. And always, in the back of my mind, was the watch. I never stopped looking for it. I scoured auction sites, estate liquidators, pawn shop inventories. I memorized its serial number from the photo my grandfather took. It became less about the item and more about the symbolism, my father's memory, passed down through betrayal, stolen but not lost. When I was 20, I finally found it. It was listed in a private auction catalog in New York, misidentified as an unremarkable vintage piece. I wired the money immediately using an alias account I'd set up for research purposes. It arrived in a velvet box, wrapped in silent dignity. Holding it was like shaking hands with a ghost. I didn't cry. I couldn't. I was too far gone down the path I'd chosen. But I did sit there for a long time, alone in my studio apartment, just turning it over in my hand. I took a photo of myself wearing it, face obscured, and printed it out. I slipped it into a small envelope and wrote her address on the front. No note. No return address. Just the image of a hand wearing the watch she tried to erase. A quiet warning. I'm still here. Over the next 2 years, I built something real. A legitimate company under a new brand. Recruited partners. Attracted early investments. All above board. All perfectly clean. Because when I came for them, it would be legally bulletproof. I registered a shell company under a different name and began designing a fake acquisition deal, something that looked too good to pass up. I created the illusion of an elite fund with insider connections and rare access. I studied Jackson's portfolio and tailored the pitch to match everything he valued. Prestige, dominance, exclusivity. He wouldn't be able to resist. I didn't want money. I wanted him to invite me in. By the time I turned 21, the trap was nearly complete. My company, clean, credible, fully operational, acted as the front. But the shell company was where the real strategy lived. It had its own branding, its own executives, all aliases, its own investment pitch. Everything was legal, though misleading. Jackson's firm had a habit of chasing high-risk, high-reward projects, especially when exclusivity was dangled in front of them. That's where I struck. I crafted a proposal around a luxury resort development in a foreign market, something exotic, politically unstable, but full of promise. I mocked up fake government partnership letters, feasibility reports, even hired actors to pose as local officials for staged Zoom calls. I knew his firm was already drowning in debt, but they couldn't resist one more big win. They always thought they could gamble their way out of the hole. I made sure the deal was structured to look like the opportunity of the decade, but with clauses that would accelerate debt triggers if early payments weren't met. It was a financial landmine disguised as a gold mine. Still, I didn't contact them directly. Not until I had a way in. Jackson and my mother were hosting a cancer charity gala that summer. I found that especially rich, her fundraising in the name of the same disease that took my father, while lying about her son's death from the same. I had my assistant secure a ticket under my alias as a strategic acquisitions consultant. Our team made a sizable donation, and suddenly, I was on the guest list. My firm had already appeared in their peripheral network by then, industry buzz carefully seeded by PR consultants I paid in advance. The gala was in a marble ballroom with golden chandeliers and a guest list full of people who'd never worked a day in their lives. Jackson was on stage, giving a speech about legacy and fighting for our families. My mother stood beside him in a diamond necklace and a black gown, nodding like she had any idea what real grief meant. I waited until they came down to mingle. I didn't rush. I circled. I introduced myself to others, kept my voice low and polished. Eventually, Jackson's assistant came to me and said, "Mr. Holt would love a word." Of course he would. We sat in the VIP lounge, a plush room with dim lights and champagne. He shook my hand like he already believed he was smarter than me. "My wife's very interested in your fund," he said. "You came highly recommended." "I appreciate that," I said. "And I've been meaning to return something she lost." I reached into my blazer and pulled out the photo. The one of me wearing my father's watch. I placed it face up on the table between us. His brow furrowed. Then I stood and took off my cufflink. Rolled my sleeve. Let him see the watch in person. He looked at it. Then at me. His mouth opened. But it was my mother's voice I wanted to hear. She appeared a few minutes later, and for the first few seconds, she didn't recognize me. Then I said, "Hello, Mom." Her champagne flute slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor. She didn't say anything at first. Just stared at me like I'd risen from the grave she dug with her own hands. "I'm not a ghost," I said. "You don't get off that easy." Jackson looked between us, confused. "You two know each other?" She didn't answer. Her face had gone pale, bloodless, her lips parted but useless. I reached into my pocket and placed a second photo on the table. It was me and my father, me as a toddler, sitting on his lap, wearing that same watch while he grinned at the camera. Her hand trembled as she reached for the chair behind her. "I don't understand," Jackson said. I turned to him. "You invested in a firm founded by the son your wife told the world had died of cancer." "I'm that son." His face twitched, anger, disbelief, then calculation. "This is some kind of joke." I smiled coldly. "No. This is the kind of truth people hide behind lies until it grows teeth." He looked at the photo again, and something shifted in him. "Not morality, self-preservation. We need to talk." "No," I said. "You need to listen." I slid a folder across the table. It contained the full paper trail, the real estate trap, the triggering clauses, the unpaid debt markers, the shell company's pullout rights, all of it. Legal, lethal, and fully enacted the moment Jackson signed the deal. "You're already trapped," I told him. "The board won't survive the exposure. Your lenders will see the default triggers and walk." "What do you want?" my mother croaked. Her voice finally cracked. I turned to her. "Retract the lie. Publicly. To everyone. Admit I'm alive. Admit what you did. Or I leak the whole story, emails, legal filings, the fake obituary you sent to the school. All of it." She looked horrified. "You can't." "You left me on a train," I said, leaning closer. "You kissed my forehead and fed me to strangers so you could put on a dress and play family with a richer man. And then you told the world I was dead. You erased me. And now you're going to put me back." Jackson stood up, furious. "You're blackmailing us?" "Not at all," I replied. "Everything here is legal. All I did was offer you a business opportunity. You accepted. Now the deal goes forward, unless you'd prefer to breach it and face litigation." My mother sat down slowly, defeated. Her hands covered her face. Jackson walked out without a word. The next morning, 112 people received an email from her. Subject line, "The truth." She told them everything. How she abandoned me, lied about my death, cut me out for convenience. How I'd returned, not to beg, but to confront. She attached the same photo I left on the table, my wrist with the watch, and ended the message with 6 words. "I don't expect forgiveness. Just truth." I didn't reply. I didn't have to. That week, 3 major investors pulled out of Jackson's firm. A scandal broke in 2 trade publications. Jackson's partners began jumping ship. She told the world I was gone. Now the world watched her unravel. Within days, Jackson's empire began to crumble. The whispers turned into headlines. One outlet called it the most elegant corporate ambush in recent memory. Another speculated insider betrayal. I didn't give interviews. I didn't need to. The email my mother sent circulated well beyond her original list. Screenshots hit social media. Former friends, colleagues, old acquaintances, all of them stunned. Some were angry, others curious. But the most important thing was this: they believed me. Because she admitted it. She told everyone I was dead. And now they knew I wasn't. Jackson tried to hold the line. Claimed the investment loss was a misunderstanding. That the firm had contingency plans. But contracts don't care about ego. As outlined, failure to meet the initial capital draw triggered automatic withdrawal clauses. The shell company pulled out first, citing reputational incompatibility. Real investors, his real money, panicked. He called me. Left 3 voicemails. I didn't respond. Then came a package to my door. Inside was the watch box. The same velvet case. But this time, it held more than just the timepiece. Tucked underneath was a letter. Handwritten, shaky, and signed. From her. It read, "I sold everything that reminded me of him because I couldn't handle the grief. I told myself that letting you go would let me forget. I see now that forgetting isn't healing, it's hiding. I was a coward. I won't ask you to forgive me. I just hope, someday, you'll stop hating me as much as I hate what I became." She'd included photos. Of me as a baby. A faded drawing I made in kindergarten. A birthday card my father had written the year before he died. I hadn't seen these things in over a decade. Somehow, they survived. There was also a donation receipt, $250,000 to a cancer research fund, in my father's name. I didn't feel peace. I felt control. For once in my life, I wasn't the victim of her story. I'd rewritten it. Forced her to say it out loud, not just to me, but to the world. The boy she'd erased was now a man standing in full view. I took the watch to my grandfather and asked him to help me clean it. We sat at the kitchen table, polishing the faceplate, gently working through the gears like a ritual. "You did it," he said quietly. "No," I replied. "I just took back what she stole." The following week, Jackson resigned from his firm. A press release claimed health reasons. A lie, of course, but one I allowed. He vanished from industry news. My mother deleted her social accounts. Their photos disappeared from Gala websites and social calendars like they'd never existed. Exactly how she wanted it when it came to me. But this time, I was the one doing the erasing. Months passed. I didn't hear from her again. Not directly. But one day, a letter came. Postmarked from a rural address in Oregon. No return name, just a neat cursive scrawl. It was from her mother, my maternal grandmother. She'd never known what happened. My mother told her I'd gone to live with my father's family after the funeral, then stopped mentioning me altogether. She said she assumed I'd wanted nothing to do with them. It wasn't until she saw the news, the scandal, the email, the leaked photos, that she realized how deep the lie had gone. "I don't expect a relationship," she wrote. "I just wanted you to know I would have fought for you, had I known. And if you ever want to talk about your mother, what she was like before all this, I'm here." I didn't reply. Not right away. Instead, I sat with the letter for a long time, just turning the pages over in my hand, the way I once turned the watch. There were parts of me that didn't want to open any more doors. I'd spent over a decade building walls just to survive. But something about her words felt untouched by the rot. I haven't decided what I'll do. Maybe I will call her. Not to reconnect with my mother's side of the family, but to reclaim another piece of the story I was never allowed to know. These days, I keep the watch on a shelf in my office. Not on my wrist, not anymore. It's a relic now. A reminder of who I was, what I lost, and what I refused to let die. I don't go around telling people what happened. But when someone asks where I'm from, I look them in the eye and say, it's a long story. But I made it out. Sometimes I wonder what I really gained. I didn't get a family back. I didn't find peace. Revenge didn't heal me. It didn't make the nights quieter or the memories softer. But it gave me something I never had before. Validation. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't weak. I wasn't disposable. I was erased, and I came back louder. The final act of my plan wasn't her confession or Jackson's collapse. It wasn't even the donation or the returned watch. It was standing in the ruins of everything they built, untouched, unburned, and fully intact. I didn't become my mother. I didn't become Jackson. I became me on my terms, with my name. And that will always be enough.